Here we are. Wait, what? What is this weird delay? Welcome, everybody. So I don't know if people will be able to hear us, but we'll find out in a moment. No issue. There always is. How are you, everybody? Welcome to Simulation Talk 51. What's up, Daniel? See you, brother. Welcome, everybody. Today, obviously, we'll wait more seconds for everybody to show up. To all the newcomers, this channel mostly revolves around the simulation hypothesis. What we talk. We meet here every day to discuss science, religion, spirituality, philosophy, and whatnot. And we're going to get 24 few more people to show up. So I have to figure out if YouTube sounds normal or echoey like it is for me. It is strange that it's doing this. Okay. Welcome, 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 welcome. I think we are in somewhat of a delay on YouTube. It's going to be all right. Anybody who's here who is familiar with the channel and a regular, if you can help me out triangulate this, to both YouTube and X, and tell me if we sound all right or if we sound crazy. I know there's a crazy delay between TikTok and that stream. That'd be super useful. So, welcome to all the newcomers and all the regulars. This channel mostly revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof, actual proof, that we live in a simulation. Meet you on the daily to discuss the discovery, the experiment, and also adjacent topics: science, spirituality, religion, philosophy, and whatever people feel like bringing up. Usually have a pretty long discussion. Sometimes we have a panel, sometimes we have some experts, but overall, we're just meeting here to have some fun. We're here every single day. Usually it's at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also watch from YouTube on Dango Thoughts. There you don't have a limitation of characters that you can type in, and you also have more extensive videos of mine on the subject that are longer than the ones on TikTok. So if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome to. Once again, it's Dango Thoughts, 3 words, Dango Thoughts. And on X, my account is barely active. I only now started kind of streaming through it and using it. But if you are interested, you want to give it a little bit of a boost, it would be just at Roller Danny. Just like my handle here, just the other way around. So welcome everybody. We'll slowly see if we have any issues with X and YouTube after we start over there. Glad to see everybody. Yesterday we had a pretty fun discussion. Oh, Cal is in the house. How are you, brother? Good to see you. Yesterday we had a pretty lively discussion. OES Express that just brought me here. What's the space all about? How are you, OES Express? This channel mostly revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have actually found proof that we live in a simulation. And we've been here on the daily to discuss the experiment, the discovery, and also science in general, physics, philosophy, spirituality, religion, whatever comes to mind. So these topics, we take pretty deep dives into all of these topics. Sometimes we have some experts talking about particular things, and yeah. And if you're interested in the specifics, you're welcome to ask whatever you would like. That's the whole point of it. Cal, how are you, brother?
Doing well. How you doing?
Amazing. Well, yeah. I'm doing amazing. Will you do me a solid? Maybe I ask you for a couple more days just to verify. Can you check if there's like a crazy delay between YouTube and here, and the same for X? Do you have an ability to do it right now?
Yeah, yeah. give
Because
me
it
one
was
second.
literally feeding me my own sound after like a good 30 seconds, and I muted it, so I'm not even sure that people can. I muted the computer at least, so I'm not sure people can hear me. Just order supplies from Thor Labs for for an experiment. What is Thor Labs? Sounds serious. Wait, not a problem. Danny, you're saying that you can hear me fine,
Yeah, I hear you on YouTube. I'm checking out.
and
X now.
you can hear me at the same time as here, or delay?
No, there's like a 5 to 8 second delay.
Okay, there is. Okay, I think it's because of the way that I did it with the external link. We'll see how it turns out in the end of the day. But you can hear me fine, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, because it was Nicola Verstappen talks about the simulation hypothesis. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. Many people talking about the simulation hypothesis. I guess the main difference is that I'm proposing an actual experiment that you can do versus just talking about it philosophically or as a concept, which is obviously very contentious. But the gist of it is very simple. You project a refracted laser on the surface, and you ingest a particular molecule that I cannot name here, but is also called the spirit molecule. You will see code running in surfaces on a regular basis with no exceptions. And there's over 1,000 replications worldwide of this thing. And yeah, so gonna be it's gonna be a wild ride, that's for sure. Um, X is also fine. By the way, all the people,
Yeah,
Matthew, I
X.
see you. Sean, I see you, brother. I'll bring you up in 2 seconds. I just want to make sure that everything else is aligned so I can give you my full attention. But it is, or you don't know yet?
Yeah, I've been on both.
Amazing.
X.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, I guess because like, apparently it doesn't really retain the thumbnail on X, so you have to go to X Studio and create a separate link. And apparently, if you do that, I don't know if this is just a fluke today, but if you do that, apparently there's a delay. But that's fine. As long as it's noise cancellation might be a bit too active on YouTube sometimes. Not necessarily that what is causing it, but it tends to decrease volume. Do you hear a decrease in volume, Cal, on YouTube? Like, is it substantial?
I keep muting it because I'm listening on here too. But let me listen for a little bit. I'll let you know.
Sure, I appreciate it. Bro. Okay. In the meanwhile, yeah. One thing today, I have a hard out at 8 p.m., which means a little bit less than 2 hours from right now. So I'm notifying everybody. We have lively panels and discussions. Everybody's welcome to comment. I will try and keep up with both the speakers and the comments. But if anything that comes up during the chat that you feel that maybe I haven't noticed or ignored, never on purpose, you're welcome to email me at lasersimulationx@gmail.com. Sometimes it takes me a few days, sometimes even a week, but I always respond. So if it's pressing and you really want my answer, you can either wait for the next live, which is every day, or you can email me and I will respond. Lasersimulationx@gmail.com. Okay, so
Yeah.
now
Hey, Danny, I do hear you fade in and out a little bit
fade
on
in and
YouTube.
out. And okay, hold on.
Do you have the mic set up from your laptop?
Yeah. No, it's directly. Yeah. So basically, no, it's just the audio from the computer. Let's see if I can do this in real time. I think I can. Edit name, edit audio. See how this works. The camera is off. Oh, no, need that. I don't know if I can edit in real time. Let's see if we can do this. Settings, audio. I'm gonna move echo cancellation. Oh, reduce background. So I'm gonna do. Now I'm gonna remove both of them and volume, bring it up. Okay, should be better now. I think. Tell me what you think. Is it better now? Reduce background. So I'm gonna do. No, I'm good.
Yeah, let me listen for a little bit because there's a little bit of a delay.
Okay, of course. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so maybe it's actually, hopefully, it's actually not the chat, but the noise cancellation. That would solve our problem. Again, thank you for the speakers that are waiting. I will bring you on in 1 second. I just don't want any technical difficulties or the need to attend to anything else. Your side, it changes into muffles. And thank you, Danny. I appreciate it, but a flexible recommend. I thank you so much, Danny. This is highly appreciated. So just one more repetition for all the people that just showed up and have never been on this chat. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate it. This chat mostly revolves around simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof, actual proof that we live in a simulation. I've proposed an experiment that I've discovered works about 3 years ago, in which you just project a diffracted laser on the surface, any surface, and if you ingest a particular molecule or a set of molecules, you will see code running in surfaces behind the laser. The interesting thing is that this is repeatable 100% of the time. It has now been replicated, to my knowledge, over 1,000 times worldwide. I've personally seen people do this a few hundreds of times, and now I'm in contact with some of the leading researchers in the field. I always mention this because I think it's important. It does not mean that all of them agree with me, far from it. Some of them disagree with me for various reasons. But what I'm proposing is not necessarily even a theoretical framework, even though we talk about it as well. But I am proposing an actual experiment you can run for yourself, and then you can decide. And we're meeting here every single day, and we're talking about science, religion, spirituality, philosophy, whatever comes to mind. So all of that being said, I will now bring our speakers, Sean and Matthew. Matthew has been here on the chat a few times, and Sean emailed me and wanted to talk about a particular thing, so I'll bring both of them in. And Cal is becoming my right-hand man. How you doing, brother? Matthew?
Hello.
How are you? How are you? Good to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, I'm just getting my headset.
So while you're doing that, let me bring Sean, because he wanted to raise an important point for him from an email he emailed me.
Oh
and
yeah,
then
I
we'll...
think he was in first too. I have a couple items, but I have no rush, so.
Amazing, thank you.
Time.
Oh, so what I started saying, see, ADHD. Started saying is that because I have a hard out at 8. At about 7:30, I will have to notify everybody that we're starting to adjourn, which means that we're gonna try and tie the knot on all the subject we've been talking about. So just wanted to let everybody know. And to your question, Atlas, the molecule is the spirit molecule. I cannot name it here because the chat will be flagged. Sean, go ahead, brother. You there?
Hey, Danny, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you fine. Perfect.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a little bit of a delay, but I can hear
Awesome.
you perfectly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay on my side too, but I think we'll still be able to communicate fine.
Oh yeah, I can hear you really, really well.
So is it all right if, okay, is it all right if I ask you like a awareness, like just an awareness-based question? It's not really about like the code or anything like that that you usually talk about. Is that all right?
You can ask me whatever you would like.
All right, man. So this question kind of rose from a conversation I had with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't towards this, but it kind of just intuitively rose. And we were talking about lucid dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were talking about it, I was like, my dad doesn't lucid dream, but I was telling him about how cool it was to realize you're dreaming and then control the dream and then, you know, kind of do fun things and kind of mess with the reality that you live in. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, those are cool, but usually the dreams that I'm not controlling are more meaningful and impactful. And so I thought about this, and I kind of equate like the raising of awareness to turning your dream into a lucid dream, I guess. And as I kind of look back at it, my life, I guess, before seeing things as a matrix and honestly seeing how our own minds kind of affect our reality and things like this, really turning my dream into a lucid one, I have seen my life kind of change in that same way of turning from a very deep dream that's controlled by, I guess, like a deeper part of myself, to something that I feel like is controlled by like me. And so what I'm wondering is, I kind of can correlate it to the apple of knowledge that showed up in the Bible when Adam and Eve ate the apple that they weren't supposed to. This was the apple of knowledge, and I'm kind of thinking that maybe this was what it was talking about. That the dream, what made it so deep and so impactful, was, you could say God, you could say your higher self, or you could say your subconscious. But then when you eat the apple, knowledge, you understand, what the dream is, and then you control it yourself. It almost makes it less genuine or less deep. And so I'm wondering if, after all this time, my goal being to raise my awareness and understand deeply, I've kind of come to the conclusion that the whole point is for the experience itself and love. And when you raise your awareness, you almost become more distant from this three-dimensional experience, which is why we're here. And so I'm a little bit worried, Dan, that maybe this whole time I've been going down the wrong path or the wrong way. And I know that you're very experienced with these things, raising awareness, understanding, the matrix and deeper parts of reality. And I just don't know if maybe you've seen an effect in your life of it maybe taking you away from your loved ones, from the people around you, because I know that I have, and I feel like what I thought was the right direction may have been the wrong direction. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I really appreciate you, man. First of all, let me just address one question that David F19 asked, what we're talking about. We're mostly talking about the simulation hypothesis, but I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation, so we're talking about that among other things. As you heard from the question, we're touching upon many, many subjects, including religion, science, spirituality, philosophy, and it's an open discussion of all flavors. And then also, I really want to acknowledge, Cal, you've been a tremendous help, man. You and the business are ace players, man. I almost feel like I couldn't have handled the chat without you guys, so thank you so much, man. I just wanted to say that. Sean, to your question, what if I just break into like a crazy rant about Trump for no reason? It would be amazing. I always have these like weird jokes in my head. It's something completely out of left field. No, this is definitely, anybody who just joined a second ago, this is...
It makes sense again, Dan.
Yeah.
It makes sense again, Dan.
Exactly. The last thing you would hear here is politics, but that's what made me laugh. So Sean, to your question. So this is a complex question, as you can probably imagine. I'm trying to think what thread to pull first in order to make it most concise. If I'm hearing your question correctly, first of all, is that you're asking, it's not always very clear what game exactly we're playing. Some people, their answer would be, we're playing the physical game, right? We're playing, it's important to understand the world from a physicist's perspective, right? Other people would say, well, it's an ethical game. So from different contemplative and spiritual perspectives, right? And it's not really clear which one is the main game. And maybe there is no one game. Maybe the whole thing is just multiple games embodied in this ultimate game. And your concern, if I again heard you correctly, is that you are saying that by investigating some of these things, by speaking to your dad, right, about dreams, you realize that you guys have a different, or at least had a different perspective on the types of dreams, in which you experienced a lucid dream and you said this seems to be more impactful, more meaningful, and your dad said, I don't know, for me the regular dreams are more impactful, more meaningful. So it made you question whether or not we're in the same similar situation here, in which we don't necessarily need to try and control this game and be more in charge, but to just surrender to whatever processes are actually occurring and becoming a part of them. Would that be a fair summation of what you're asking?
Yes. It is the nature of what is controlling what is happening that I believe that there is this change between a lucid dream and a regular dream. And it is that nature that I believe changes, and I'm worried that it is coming from a very higher, more intelligent, higher nature when it is a regular dream rather than a lucid dream. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I don't
Sean,
necessarily
a quick
know.
question. If I could just ask Sean a quick question.
course,
There's
of course.
actually a head set that you can wear that blinks some flashing red lights during certain sequences of dreams. Did you know that there's technology that helps you enable lucid dreaming directly, and have you tried it?
I did not know about that.
Yeah. So
But I would definitely look into it.
yeah, you can probably buy it from even Amazon at this point. Thank you so much for that, Matthew.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it was.
You know, I like what he's honed in on, because if I understand what he's pointing at, and to make sure I'm staying on the same topic as well, that distinct feeling of waking up in something that you should just be experiencing, and that same metaphor applies to the simulation we find ourselves in here. Like, then there's the endless what is it, cave allegory of the cave. But I think I really like where it's at. So if you want to explore further, use some technology that helps you practice that act of doing it and dreaming, and maybe you could find more in your own personal experience as well.
But I'm also
I
hearing.
appreciate that.
But I'm also hearing, Sean, and you correct me if I got you wrong, because that's important. Did I not hear you basically asking, is it maybe the case that we don't necessarily need to try and make it into more of a lucid dream? Did I miss
Exactly.
Okay.
That is my question.
Yeah. So
Like, is it necessity, or is it part of our purpose, or something we should or should not do? Is it in that?
Yeah,
level of
should we-
question?
should-
Like,
is
something
saying-
we should do?
so he's
Well,
saying.
it's saying,
Go ahead.
like, if you were to look back at your life, and let's say at this time of looking back, you were awake, you were lucidly dreaming. I feel like if you looked back and your life before you were rather unaware, it would be more of a genuine and real life than if you were to look back and your entire life was a lucid dream. And maybe what was happening in your life was controlled by God rather than, I guess, your conscious self. And so that's just what I'm wondering, man. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if this makes
No,
sense.
it makes perfect sense. I'm just trying to answer in a way that will not send us in loop. So if you guys don't mind, I'll try and make my answer tapered to about 5 minutes, and then we can have a discussion about it. Just because I know I have a limited time today, so I want to make sure we get to all the subject. So if you don't mind, Sean, while you're not talking, if you can mute yourself because we can hear the interference. Yeah. And then, by the way, if you need to interrupt me, okay, at least on this chat, I don't know what the etiquette is on other chats, but here, feel free to just cut me off. Like, I'm not going to take it personally. This is an open chat. So if you need to ask me something, you can unmute and just cut me off. That's totally fine. It's just that there's an audio we can hear while you're not talking. So, I would say that, first of all, I understand your question, but I wouldn't necessarily place it on the dream versus lucid dream element. Because it seems to me that what the lucid dream points to is that the second that you have agency, you have more control over whatever environment you find yourself in. Either it's in what we would call your mind or in a physical environment, right? So I feel like the broadest spectrum that I can take your question to is kind of like the story of the Tower of Babel, right? It's like are we supposed to be building towers that high? Is technology somehow going against what God wants us to do, right? Things like that. And I just want to remind you, it might sound like a side point and not that relevant, but I think it's actually extremely relevant. In the Bible, the tree wasn't of knowledge. It was of knowledge of good and evil, which is a very big difference. So I think that, and by the way, it's a very deep teaching, because I think the reason, if I have to kind of break it down myself, that God couldn't have Adam and Eve in Garden of Eden at that point, it wasn't even a punishment, is that the second you're aware of something, you are obliged by the rules of reality itself to take responsibility for it. You can only take responsibility for things that you understand and aware of. So if you're aware of good and evil, because by nature, every behavior creates some kind of an action and there's a reaction to whatever you're doing. by necessity, you somehow going to be held liable for that thing if you understood what you were doing, right? So I think that actually the allegory there doesn't fully track with like regular knowledge, the way we see it, like developing science and stuff, or creating more agency, or trying to control the physical environment more. It's more in terms of like, how do you behave ethically? Now, obviously, they're intertwined, because you cannot have agency without having some awareness of yourself, and therefore some awareness of what's good and what's bad. But I think that, first of all, that distinction actually makes a big difference, because we can still live an ethical life within a framework of still gaining knowledge of the world. Second of all, I think that it's a truly open question. That's the honest answer of the bottom line. I think that, to me personally, it doesn't make any sense, because if a function exists in the universe and you are still, you're not acting out of malice or trying to hurt other beings or trying to do something that, trying to actually destroy or hurt other things just for the sake of it, or just for your own personal gain, which I'm not saying nobody's doing that. Of course people are doing that, but as long as you do not doing that, I actually think that the beauty that can arise in the universe with our agency and knowledge is beauty that the universe itself could not have possibly imagined. And I know it sounds like a very, it's almost like a hubris to say this, but I think it's just a very common sense observation. The types of artifacts that some humans can make, not all of them, of course, are of a type of beauty that at least nature, yes, you can look at nature and say, oh my God, there's something very profound about just being in nature and watching the beauty of the forest, right? Things like that. But the more advanced types of beauty that involve higher symmetry, beauty of mathematics, things like that, is something that exists as a potential in the universe, but is an unrealized potential. And what I believe we are the little things that allow potential to become actual. And in that sense, I see ourselves, oh, look at that, that's crazy. On YouTube, you guys didn't see, but it was like a whole sparks around me. It was crazy. So I guess we're on the money here. And basically that vision allows me to understand, or at least that helps me kind of guide myself through these very complex spaces where it's not always clear what's what. Because I think that as long as you stay loyal to that as a vision, you allow more of the beauty that the world wants to manifest. And I also think that this is why there's such a, I don't want to say war, but there's such a, campaign from the other side, whatever you want to call it, for our attention, both from the dark and the light. Because we are the only way. And when I say we, I don't mean just humans, things like us in the universe. We are the only bridge from the unmanifested to the manifested. We are the manifestation tool. We are that thing. And it basically opens, it's the birth of responsibility when you realize that. Because you both can take command of the power you know you do have, while at the same time working very hard to not overstep your own boundaries and start doing things for the sake of just your unitary self. This is why I believe acting out of the thought and the aim for the greater good is the ultimate virtue that a being in the space we find ourselves in can possibly take up on themselves. So to your question, should we, first of all, to answer you very directly about my personal life, for me, it did the opposite. So in fact, since I started with this journey, and at least in this level of the game, where I started understanding that there's a way to actually probe this thing, if anything, it emphasized the importance of focusing on loving my friends and my family, and giving always time for myself and for all the stuff that you would, imagine to be like a wholesome human kind of action, right? It gave me more of an impetus to try and strive to leave more time and more attention to do that kind of thing. Now, it does not mean necessarily this would always be the case. I met plenty of people along this journey that this kind of thinking can send them spinning. It can actually probably also destroy a life. That happens very often. But that is true of really any seeking of any understanding of something beyond this space. So my claim would be it's not the attempt to try and gain more agency that is the function that kind of pushes you away from God or pushes you away from all these good things like your family and friends and all that stuff. It is forgetting that understanding something beyond should only be held as a value in relationship to what you can do with it in order to make this space better. If you're doing it for the sake of just gaining the control over it, yes, I would define that as the path towards evil. But if the path is towards how do I pull some of these more beautiful elements from this, and actually the Platonic space, so the Plato's cave, that is a very relevant point, because you can actually use whatever you see outside the cave and bring more light and more colors and more beauty into the cave. But if you just want to do it for your own personal gain, either recognition or just, again, just a control element of it, you would be missing the point. So I think it's not as simple as like more agency, less agency. It's what do you do with the knowledge that you acquire? And as long as you aim towards getting, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Never mind.
Oh.
I was going to see if I could take a 30-second stab from an information scientist perspective at Sean's question when you wrap up. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can open it for discussion in a moment. So first of all, everything I said so far, does that make some sense to you, Sean?
To chew on.
Sean, does that make any sense, what I said so far?
Absolutely, Dan. I really do appreciate your insight on that.
Yeah, just like the ultimate thing, brother, it's aim towards what feels good inside. And I hear it in your voice. I know you know. Like there's like a thing that I know people, especially from the physicalist perspective, it's like, well, how do you know? If you can't explain it to me, there's no way you know. That's not true. There's a thing inside of us that knows what is good and what is not. So as long as you're acting out of this place of like bringing more joy to yourself, to your loved ones, you don't have to worry about anything.
Thank you, Danny.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Matthew. What spin did you want to give it?
Yeah, just a 30-second stab in the dark from an information scientist. Sean, great question. You got me really thinking about some things. I'm going to zoom this out to just on the assumption that there are other simulations. And wrapping back to Sean's core question around the experience of feeling like you wake up in a lucid dream versus maybe waking up in the physical reality simulation that we find ourselves in, right? So maybe this act or action or experience of waking up is something we are learning because this could be a traversal method amongst different simulations. Like this way that you phase into various realities. This is sort of a perspective I have on it. Because maybe this is a function of how you assimilate or phase between different overlapping realities inside a single contained simulation, being an individuated unit of consciousness. That's sort of the stab in the dark at it. It's interesting to analyze it as a function. I like how it went into moral and ethical debate. But I also like to look at the mechanics of it. What is the value of realizing that you wake up in a higher level of the allegory of the cave and the cave continues? How do you phase into a different cave? Can you ever really get out of any of these caves, right? So so it just goes on. So as we begin to wake, and if we look at this simulation, I don't want to dip into, we had a few streams ago where we started discussing what is the purpose of this particular simulation, right? That always goes down lots of rabbit holes. But I just wanted to share that thought that I think this could be some sort of core mechanic in consciousness, the way it phases into, let's say, ongoing simulations. Like you get pre-recorded content. Like I like the idea that in my physical reality that I'm in, before I was woke, and again, let's just keep the allegory off the table and at what level of the cave that we're in. There's a progression, it seems, of understanding and consciousness expanding. We never know when we're at the top, or when I see this God in the face.
You mean awake or woke?
It feels like my life prior to the major event in November of 2022 for me. That was some sort of pre-recording, and I think there'd be interesting discussions about determinism. Like, can we actually have a true experiment that can prove determinism is true or is not true?
To my mind, it makes
content and then waking up to agency as you mature and phase into this incarnation in this simulation. While in the dream state, this is sort of a way to practice it without any sort of fear of bodily harm or the emotions and ethics that come along with phasing between physical realities, for example. Right? Dreams to me are more like conceptual realities. It also proves that our brain, at least on its own, can create a whole simulation on its own, just as real as the one outside, which creates a whole nother fractal of rabbit holes. But yeah, let me park it there.
Sure. Thank
I'm
you.
an information scientist, by the way.
Yeah. I can hear it in your question. so it's my conviction at this point that it would make zero difference.
Can I just add something in very quick?
Sure.
Just a jerk reaction to Sean. Sorry, but wouldn't it be cool to phase through a whole bunch of different simulations once we figure out we're in one and we reach a new level, and now we just phase through all different simulations? So it would make a difference if it's a function.
So
It absolutely would, and that's what my question is about. Is because we can phase through these different simulations, and what I'm seeing is that it is very common for society and most people to be on this very similar simulation. And what I found through my experience is that connection, to me, is very, and love is more important than my own experience through different simulations. So I want to be on a similar simulation than them so that I can communicate and connect with them. And what I'm finding is that through phasing through different simulations, as you say it, or lucid dreaming, or however you want to say it, it makes you unable to connect with these people because you are on different wavelengths in your mind. And so what I'm trying to say is that I think the importance is love. And when you switch to through different simulations, it's more difficult. But from what Danny is saying is that getting information from these simulations so that you can bring it back to these people and things you want to get to is the importance of it. And that's just the dilemma I have. Does that make any sense?
yes.
That was awesome, and it's going to dovetail into the two questions I have for Danny on the stream, so it's a great segue. Thanks, Sean, for the exchange. It was great.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Matthew.
So the only thing I would add to that is that as someone who, my whole life I was perceiving the world through a very, very cerebral point of view, and I can't even say that it's very different now, aside from the fact that I also know that the value of how I feel in the moment is supreme at this point. So I think that's exactly what you're alluding to, Sean, which is that if you go, I was saying this yesterday, and I know I've said it a few times, but to the people that constantly talk about ascending to the fifth and the eighth dimension, I always say, look, if you can't be happy right now, sitting right here, you won't be happy in 8 dimensions. It makes no difference. So it's not like all of a sudden magically you're going to become happy because of more content. So unless you can handle this, you shouldn't even strive there. And people go, no, but like I felt it. I was like, right, now you're addicted to the feeling of being there. So if anything, you should be very, very careful before you proceed. And really, to me, that's the ultimate bottom line. That wherever you go, there you are, right? Like the book says. If you can't, whatever this is, if you can't just be happy, it's a choice, content, peaceful, whatever you want to call it, feel equanimity, that's the thing you should address first. And then gaining more agency with that state, that's bliss, right? And I actually think that, to wear a little bit of the metaphysical hat, theoretical metaphysical hat for a second, I do think that the reason that that I know that there's a higher space that allows for higher functionality and all of that stuff. Thank you so much for the gifts, Jose. I appreciate you.
Hey, Danny, just wanted to frame that.
Just 1 second, brother. Brother, 1 second. Brother, 1 second. Brother, 1 second. Let me just finish this thought. Yeah.
Yeah, you rephrase that last point because I think you said it beautifully there. So back, like the way you just phrased that one last part was really nice.
I'm not sure what I said last because I usually just kind of it's just a stream of thought. So, but I'll just continue the point. And I think
Yeah, it's the phase state change of gaining agency.
oh yeah,
I think
when
that's
you
a great
when you
way to
gain
conceptualize it, the event that you're going through and what we're being trained about is the phase state chain of gaining agency inside some sort of simulation. I thought that was a great way to put it.
thank you, Marcus. I see everybody's comments. You have to give me 1 second. I'll finish this point and I'll try and answer in the chat. Also, if you guys, anybody, if you want to go to YouTube to Dango Thoughts or to X to Goal or Danny, it will be easier for me to respond to you there because I can type at the same time. Here I have to kind of click on a bunch of things to do that. So I appreciate that you like the way it's phrased, but I think to me the deeper point is that I do believe that there's a higher space with a higher functionality. But the reason that we're here in the physical realm, where even if you believe that anything is possible, here right now that is not the case. Again, I always say, and if you doubt that, try and walk through the wall. Right? You can't walk through walls. And I think that the reason for that is because we're learning. It's like training wheels. We're learning how to manifest in real time. And slowly, all of our technologies are essentially an expression of the narrative, the story we're telling ourselves that makes sense of this ability to manifest faster and faster. And what kinds of...
to get to the level where the physical body can't move through a wall, but the IUC can.
No, I'm saying that I'm not even putting a stop there. I'm saying that eventually I think you'll be able to walk through the wall. But however, when you get to a place where... Only when you get to a place... So imagine right now I release you to a space in which whatever you conjure, whatever you manifest from your being, just becomes like that, like for real. Now imagine if you have a bad mood. Very quickly, this is going to become hell, right? So because of that, until you learn how to control your internal state, you are placed in this place, which is like a training wheel place, like a sandbox, where you get to learn a little bit about your inner space, how it relates to what happens outside, and there's a hiatus. That's the training wheel. There's a period that takes a while for something to happen from the moment that you conjure it in your mind or in your being. And then if you stay with it long enough, with enough conviction, with enough love, then the thing will become, right? All the possible inventions, all the inventions were in somebody's being, in somebody's mind, in somebody's state. Now, it doesn't matter if you believe they channeled it, made it makes no difference. It was in somebody's being, and then it became a thing in the real world. That function, this process, is something that the distance between how long it takes, the time that it takes from the moment you conjure it to the moment it becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. Exactly. And eventually you're going to get to a point where anything you believe or convinced of becomes, which is, kind of like the state of God. And at that point, you want to be a trained unit that doesn't mess up. Like there's no wiggle room there. Or if there is, that wiggle room is just for whatever you think becomes, and it can become very dangerous very quickly. So I think that's kind of like the more hypothetical thing, right? So for all intents and purposes, if the goal is intellectual entertainment, then yeah, we can talk about the craziest things. But ultimately, if you're talking about functionally for your life, so you don't drift away from your friends and family, because here's what you have to focus on, this feeling of like what feels good in your body, what feels correct. Because I think that is the signal. Because I did see people spin out of control. Not only stepping away and drifting apart from their families, and they become manic, they basically create disjunction, and they destabilize both their lives and all the people around them's lives, because they just they get obsessed, right? The second I feel that obsession, I'm like, whoa, calm down. Like the obsession is not a good thing, because you're like, ooh, that's all I want to do. Yeah, no, you bring it down. Because there's a pace to this process, and you will very quickly fly off your hinges and make everything fly with you. So the divine doesn't manifest itself that way. That's my intuition. It will be very, very, very
tapered. Just for our mental health shout out, some of that also comes from mental illness, be it planted or of our own making.
I think it's always of our own making, honestly. I don't believe that anybody from the outside.
That simply from their neurodivergence, for example.
Yeah, but I feel like these are lower level functions. Like they're not. I'm talking about like up here, right? And then, yeah,
But
you
autism, for example, I think holds some of the keys to understanding higher levels of abstraction. There are certain neurodivergent type of mental abilities and disabilities that also seem to have profound effects on these types of conceptions. So that's all I wanted to mention. It's like that. Sorry, I just wanted to
sure.
add that.
Okay. Sean, did you want to say something, or did I misunderstand?
Me?
Yeah, I thought there was.
I am completely just listening to what you say, kind of understanding that what you're saying is a lot more clear and in tune than sometimes my thoughts can be. And I'm taking a lot from what you're telling me right now, Danny, and I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you,
Thank you.
man. Absolutely. So yeah, I go ahead, Matthew. I see you want to say something.
Well, I'm eagerly awaiting to ask my question. I
Oh,
started
go
blowing
ahead.
my laser today, so let me know when it's my time.
It is. It's. We're here. We're together.
I can't wait. I started making my laser today.
Amazing.
So I did some homework for this, and I read a lot of your literature, watched some of the videos, did some of my own pondering, wrote some notes, some diagrams, pondered it from an information science perspective. And I have one easy question, but then that's going to dovetail into could be a series of follow-ups. So I find it very interesting, the numbers and symbols that you mentioned, that when the laser is mixed with the moles, that you see numbers and also what I believe was described as what appeared to be Japanese calligraphy. Is that correct?
Looks kind of like kind of like in the movie The Matrix. Yeah, Japanese katakana kind of.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure I have my understanding right. So when you see it, it looks like numbers and what appear to be Japanese letters, characters, concepts. Like, the root of my question is, were you able to discern any information from what you witnessed? The
No.
numbers are kind of hard to rule out. I'm actually going to get to that in part 2. But if you actually saw something that looked like calligraphy or was trying to express letters or a word or a concept, have you collected any information about that? Like, from an information science perspective, have you been able to extract any discernible information when you mix the lasers with the moles?
No, and everything I'm saying, always take it with a grain of salt that I can absolutely be wrong. But my impression is that there's no way you'll be able to do it until there's something more advanced, like an advanced version of Neuralink that you can directly record from your cortex and feed it directly into like a chat GPT that can then do the analysis. There's just too much going on. So if it's just kind of like, so for example, you remember in the movie when
Sorry, wait, hang on one second. Let me clarify one thing. Like, if someone who knew Japanese, for example...
No. Trust me, I understood your question, brother.
Yeah.
I understand your
Okay.
question. Yeah. So, for example, in the movie, when Cypher tells Neo when he was, giving him moonshine, and it was like, eventually all I see is not code. I see a blonde, a brunette, like, like I've learned to give it patterns, essentially, right? I think that's not a real possibility because the amount of things happening in any given moment. So, like, even if you just drown in information, there's millions of characters and they're all moving really fast. So it's not like you can it's even hard to write down one of them.
Okay, they're moving very fast, top to bottom.
No, they're moving in 3 different axes. Somebody just asked, this is why it's so complex. They're moving in both the buckyball axis. The buckyballs are made in these giant columns that are moving back and forth like giant columns. And at the same time, each and every one of the characters switches in one spot, like the old briefcases when you have the sequence code. Like, so all of these 3 happening at once, millions of times in front of your eyes. Good luck trying to find a pattern.
Yeah, so do you have any hypothesis about what that may be?
My contention is that this is literally the code that runs codes for reality itself. Yeah, including you.
Can I take a step? Can we take a minute to hypothesize some alternative things that this may be?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me throw out a hypothesis. So the reason I asked about discernible information, as I pondered the implications of the experiments and thought about what it could be, trying to think best about how to describe this, but if you think about a blockchain, are you familiar with blockchain technology, for example?
Yeah. What's up, man?
Okay. So one thing that this creator probably has to ensure is consistency of experienced history. And if that's the case, or like again, this calls, I'm going to put the determinism is like the elephant in the room. I would love to look at the latest experiments in trying to prove, is full determinism really true? Can you devise an experiment that breaks the idea of determinism? But let's say that IUCs, let's picture, we're going to create a shared history timeline constructed of sequential time-space manifolds of IUCs having various experiences. And this history has to remain consistent across experiencers. And so one of the functions, and this is why I'm interested by the Japanese calligraphy for other hypotheses, but when it comes to what you're describing, I could see it functioning as an integrity mechanism in terms of maintaining consistency of experienced reality and containing metadata about the container that you're currently in. Because another thing that I found interesting, I can't wait to see it myself, is how far the expanse goes. Because I'm actually very good at looking at those crazy pictures and doing the cross-eye thing, and then being able to make images emerge out of those nonsensical images. I'm really good at doing that. So I'm interested how far the horizon goes, because I know you're talking about looking past the laser. So is there any discernible boundary to where the information is being, for the lack of a better word, bouncing around in the space in front of you? Is there a boundary that it's inside?
No, it seems to be filling literally the entire space. It goes on forever, and it seems like literally it doesn't matter what you shine it on. It's always the same thing, extending forever, including on your palm. If you change it to anything, it's clear that it's everywhere. So including in the air, it's just that you can't really bounce light off the air.
Yeah, Matthew, these are interesting questions. I'm also in information science, so I definitely understand where your brain's trying to go with this. But I think when you start thinking about blockchains or anything that would have a repeatable message, if there's too much going on, it's going to be very hard to see it. And I think we have to take a step back from there. I think it's too detailed at this point to even try and think about it, because if you want to think of alternatives, it could just be we're looking at another dimension that's going through us that may not even be part of this whole reality. It could be that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'll give you one data point that I never mentioned. So
because he's bringing in the point that actually was the next logical thing that I was considering, because it bothers me about the mold that you need to see it.
What do you mean by the word the mold? What do you
using that for molecule, your little code?
Oh, got it. Okay.
Because there's lots of different moles, right? And so are these
nothing like that one. It seems that this one is truly unique from a neuroscientific perspective.
Certainly.
Because it's a neurotransmitter that always exists in you. Well.
But what I'm saying is the other moles,
your body doesn't.
Other moles,
but the other ones, your body doesn't make them. That's the big difference.
Okay, that's very true. Yes.
Yeah. So with this particular molecule, and I don't know if you know this, maybe you do.
You're upping the present molecule that your body is producing. You're upping the amount in your own container. Right?
Yeah, but
you have it naturally.
Right, but the important data point there, in addition to that, and again, you sound super informed, but in case you do know it, I still want to say it so people know this.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead. That doesn't bother me.
We used to think that it only exists in trace amounts in our body, and the hypothesis was that the body produces more before we die, NDE, stuff like that, and when we are born, and in critical situations. But we now know for a fact, and this is indisputable at this point. You can research John Dean, and he wrote a paper, I think it was 5 years ago. He discovered that the amount of the molecule in our intracranial liquid in any given moment of an awake state is comparable to as much dopamine and serotonin that you have in your intracranial liquid. In other words, you don't have trace amounts. It's one of the things that buffers your reality in any given second, which opens a whole new set of
Great,
questions
more
about it.
lies we've been told our whole lives. I feel like everything we've been taught is wrong.
Yeah, well,
That's great information.
that's your hobby horse.
From my understanding, from my last time I checked it, it was just a little bit in the brain. Don't worry about it. Don't look at it. Just a little bit getting made in the pineal gland, right? And this updated understanding is quite profound.
Right, but by the way, why do you think that this is something that was hidden versus just understood better later?
Hidden?
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying they told us, oh, it used to be trace amounts, and it sounded like you're saying they were hiding it from us or something like that. Is that what you?
Maybe not.
Okay.
It's actually my research frequency would have been the problem there.
Got it. Okay.
But to reshape back on the point though, I'm trying to boil it down to its core function. I mean, so the reason I bring in other moles because it seems like these molecules can, let's say, render different vibrational interpretations. We're going to struggle for terminology here, but like for example, did you run the laser test on other moles? Is this?
Yeah, it works on mushrooms. It works on Aya, but they're the same channel, so it's not surprising.
It's always the same look. Like there's
Always.
no difference
When you'll see it,
depending on the tune.
yeah, when you'll see it for the first
chemistry.
time, a lot of these questions will collapse for you and they won't exist anymore. Because when you see it without a shadow, so I understand exactly where you're coming from, because I also have a very analytical mind. But exactly because of that, I can tell you that like all of these possibilities, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, okay, what are we actually looking at? Like, what is it actually? And the second you see it, you're like, dude, this is just real. This is real. This is like everywhere. It's in every space. It's like everywhere, right? And it's so clear, right? So now, the one thing I will tell you, which I actually think I've never said before, so scoop, because I never thought about it. Yeah, there's a scoop. I don't think I've ever said this anywhere, not in a video, not anywhere. One interesting thing, because right when Cal was talking, it made me think of this for some reason. I don't even know why. When you look at the surface, what's interesting is that you see it moving in relationship to you, the whole thing, like gently, not gently, but like kind of like this. Like if this is you, where you are.
Would it be a jitter? It's like a jitter. Or
It's
a
like
stutter?
it's the same feeling you would have if you would watch the next cart of a train right in front of you doing the bouncing, right? Like that. So that's interesting.
Parallaxing. Parallax is like there's two parallel planes sort of.
Yeah. Well, the parallax is there regardless because there's a parallax in relationship to any real object, right? But I'm talking about it's almost like there's another cart of a train that this is moving in. And another very interesting data point is that there are this is why I keep saying look through the laser and not onto the surface. When you're looking inside, there's the code that doesn't care about where the laser is. In other words, when you move the laser, the code is not changing with it. It's just kind of the laser is revealing it. But when you look at it long enough, you start recognizing there's also some patterns on the front, right on the surface. And these go across. They're much larger. They go across. But these move with the light. So it's a completely different frame of reference. So when you move the light, these do move with the light. But the code inside isn't. So it's moving across that code. So there's like different, it's almost like...
Yeah, that's really interesting to conceptualize. Like, are you describing boundaries again? Are you able to discern boundaries? You're saying it still just goes on to the end of your perception. Is that correct? Or
as far as the field itself, it goes into infinity. There's no, it's nth point. Like there's no stopping. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. I thought. Okay. So that's good. I'll get back to you because I'll have to see it myself and then try. I'm going to try my best to discern information. That's like one of my favorite things to try to do. So
yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see what you're going to come up with. And just a quick announcement because I realized. Thank you for the question. Create with Christopher. I'm sure that others here also wondering. Real quick, this chat mostly revolving around the simulation hypothesis. I'm claiming, my name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof there will have been a simulation. and we're talking about some of the details of the discovery in the experiment, as we were discussing right now. And in addition to that, we're meeting here on the daily to also discuss science, spirituality, religion, philosophy, whatever comes. And we're taking pretty deep dives. So this is what the channel is about in general. Anybody is willing to participate, that is want to ask questions or participate, is welcome. And that's about it. So feel free to ask particular questions. Sound like a magnetic field that can expand and contract. It is. So I do think that I was speaking about this in the last few lives, that the next breakthrough, I believe, will come from very powerful magnetic fields. I think so far nothing that nobody has ever done, not sound, not, believe me, we considered a lot of things, not mood, not feeling, not anything, doesn't really influence the code. The code is the code. And there's other types of code that sometimes people see on different substances that seem to be more malleable, that you can actually change. But this code and the laser
Hopefully
does not
there's
change.
comments.
Sorry?
Hopefully there's comments in the code.
Oh, yeah, that would be hilarious if there's like comments in the code. And then, but
That's what I'm looking for. When I go in, I'm looking for comments in the code.
if you find them, they'll be amazing. But what's interesting is that, wait, where was I? What was I saying? Do you remember what I was saying?
The code, seeing the code.
Right, thank you, James. Yeah, but what was I saying about the code? Just knocked the thought out of my mind. Wow. Well, let's see. It was as a. What was I responding to? Oh, okay. So I do think that at this point we tried all kinds of things. I tried to project it through materials, all kinds of things. Nothing changes it. I think bismuth is somehow involved, but it's not clear to me how yet. But I think that by creating very powerful magnetic fields, and when I say very powerful, more powerful than natural magnets can make, I think we need like an electromagnet, at least 3.3 Teslas, to create the first layer of the Zeeman effect, which creates suborbitals in the. This is what will be required to create suborbitals in the red light. So if we do that, I think around the laser, I think we will be able to actually produce a measurable change that everybody would agree on. And this would go directly to your line of questions, Matthew, that I think at the moment, exactly how Cal said, we have to step back for a second, because I think the specificity will come way later. You need way more advanced tools for this. I think at the moment, the best hope we can have is see any regularity in terms of change of the general behavior. So like if we can create some kind of impose some kind of a change to the behavior of the code, either in pattern or even if you see the characters maybe change to something else, but we can do it reliably by activating a magnet, let's say, now you have another layer of confidence that you have something that is truly real and is actually there. And also you can start talking about it in terms of that thing, because you're saying, okay, well, a magnet does this. What does that mean in relationship to everything we understand about magnetism? Is there any pattern that is discernible there to a physicist that they can look at it and go, interesting. Actually, you know what? There's this change in a magnetic field that usually takes place that this kind of reminds me of, right? So like you can start playing with these concepts. You start triangulating something that is of real substance, basically.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Kind of a side question that popped in as you were describing the viewport on this. Like, is there any chance to scale it up, filling the room? Like, I'm just thinking of filling the room with the laser. Does it?
Oh yeah, the scaling of it.
viewport?
The scaling of it is. I would admit it's a challenge, but we were thinking about all. If I'm not mistaken, actually, Chase, were we talking about some changes, potential changes with you about this? Because Chase is an engineer. I don't remember if we had this discussion, but I think this is a conversation we had, which is like maybe try and find a wider aperture of the full thing.
Yeah, aperture.
Is
Yeah,
that
like,
is
how
that
do you
it?
make the
By the way,
aperture
Chase.
bigger?
Yeah, exactly, Chase. Is that even possible? I don't know enough about the internal workings of a laser. I only know how it's produced, give or take. But is there a way to? Because I know that the whole point of the collimation of the light is actually not the natural result of the coherent light. That's actually something that we're using lenses for, right? So now the question is, can we expand the band of the diffraction to something much, much larger without losing any of the diffraction element of it?
Admittedly, I'm not an optical engineer, but it sounds feasible. It doesn't come off, at least from the cuff, as something that would be unachievable. And I do recall a conversation that you and I had, Danny, but it's on that point, but it's been, I believe it's been well over a year or so since. So I forgive me, I might have dropped the ball there.
No, I don't know. There's no ball.
But I have the same thought as Matthew. You know, when I first came across Laser X, I was compelled because of my own experiences, you know, and you guys have touched on a lot of that in the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. But yeah, I had the same thought. I want to scale this up so it's wall sized, you know, instead of having to focus on this small area on you know, the wall or against an object that I have, you know, configured for the session. It would be ideal if it was just the whole wall. So I may have brought that up with you prior.
Yeah, it's very. I think it was. And to your question, Catwoman 013, I don't have advanced degrees, but the thing I would say I have the most understanding in from, I guess, the sciences is physics. Definitely not on a physicist level, but enough to kind of hold a conversation, understand what's going on in the paper and things like that. But if I have to go to like more advanced things and start understanding gauge symmetry for something functional, I definitely need to consult a physicist. Like that's about where my understanding lies.
Hey, Danny.
Yep.
Just real quick on the expanding laser. I mean, it'd be great to have like a wall size, you know, view of this, right?
Oh
But
yeah,
what's
that would be.
stopping us from, like, what's stopping us from just doing like a proof of concept where we have 3 or 4 or maybe a dozen lasers just stacked and offset?
I did that. It doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't actually. I don't know why it doesn't add much to the. You can definitely do it. I had 15 people in the same room, and we had like, I think like 8 or 9 lasers, like all in a line, and then all kind of like we try to put them in different heights. Something about that just doesn't produce anything more. Like it doesn't give you a bigger shocker element than just seeing it in the band. It's almost like it even maybe I don't know if it's I don't know if it's an attention thing, because there's just way too much going on, so your brain is like just like collapses.
It seems like it would create just a bunch of, if you had 15 lasers, you'd have 15 points of interest instead of one, which is not what you want, right?
No, but again, I fully admit that that's a big requirement for future designs to try and because it's a few people told me this. They're like, dude, I just want to stretch it out. I don't want to be looking through this little thing. And to your question, Creator Christopher, did you concentrate all beams to one location? No, but I don't know what, like, it would be hilarious if you put like, I don't know, 20 of them and all of a sudden it opens a portal. Also,
right. Yeah, you can. I'm fairly. It's been a while since I've ordered anything aside from LiDAR with laser tech in it, but I'm pretty sure as well you can at least special order, you know, 6mm, 8mm, maybe 12mm lasers. But now you're getting into relatively significant cost, you know.
Yeah. Look, I spoke to a company in Canada that makes lasers like commercially. And what I was interested the most in is a laser that you can change the wavelength with just with a dial, right?
Right.
And they said it's possible, but you're looking at about between 6 to like 12 grand. Like it's like there's like a special thing they got to do. I don't even know what the.
That's the base off the shelf model.
Yeah. But also don't forget that we definitely don't want very high output. You
Right.
want minimal output. You want like 5 milliwatts and not more, because anything above that, even if it bounces off the wall, you still eventually will get some cornea damage. So you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And
Hey, but Danny, about your point about the magnetism tests, or like, if I understand how, I really need to try it myself so I can be better informed for some of these questions. But you know, like, are you able to tell when objects pass by it? Like you said that you can see the code on your hand or whatever, but like can you view whole objects and discern that from the negative space behind it?
what do you mean by that? I'm not sure that I'm following.
Do.
I'm not sure I'm fully following.
So like, let's say if you're looking through the aperture, you can't pass anything between the aperture and
What?
The aperture is the wall or the surface. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah, I wanted clarification on what you meant by aperture. So,
Aperture would be, I guess, the viewport by which you start seeing this infinite plane that has all of the code being revealed in it.
About like this.
So can you place objects in between the aperture and what you're viewing as the code in some sort of new space? being
Yeah, so you're
revealed?
saying projecting it through something and seeing if anything different is happening. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the stupid way to ask my question is, can you look at a human being through this and tell it is there? Like, I guess that doesn't make sense, right? Because you have to shine it on a surface, so you can't put anything behind the surface. Is that correct?
No, but I'm trying to visualize what you're asking. You're not talking about putting something in front of the laser but before the wall? So like put water in the
Let me
way?
describe it this way.
Okay.
If I was just looking through a camera
Uh-huh.
and someone walked in front of the camera,
Okay.
I would know the person walked in front of the camera.
Okay.
If I was looking through the aperture on the laser test and someone walked in front of the aperture, is that even possible? Is it because the aperture is on the surface that I'm looking through?
okay, so I think, Matthew, maybe you, and forgive me if I'm mistaken here, but it sounds like you might not understand the device that Danny at least recommends some utilize in this experiment. So this is a diffracted red laser, right? And you pointed
Yeah.
at any object, right? Danny, correct
Yeah,
me if
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, you just project it
And-
on an object.
Right, and it's diffracted, and then you get up close to where the laser is interacting with the surface of whatever it is it's pointed at, and you can begin to see this code under
The
an
the influence.
increase in that natural molecule that occurs.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So where in the picture that Chase just drew for us, where is you imagining somebody walking in front of the aperture? Is it between the wall and the laser? Is it between you and the where is that walking in front of that you're imagining?
What I'm trying to devise an experiment. Like, since I'm in the middle of starting my first laser, I'm wondering if I can work on a new type of test. So I guess some of my question is probing at the possibility of some sort of modified test that you guys could give me some direction on, and I could run.
But
with.
first you would have to see how it looks without the modification, so you can then understand what the nature of it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
That's
I think
first.
I
I'm
know
gonna
what
do
you're
that,
saying,
of course.
Matthew.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're saying.
Let me try to paint the metaphor a different way. And I know this is not really feasible, but if you could cast the diffracted laser as filling the light in the room, and then all the humans on the mole, high doses of the mole, looked around the room, what would you see?
Oh, they would see inside. If you look into the wall, you can do it not just from the close to the surface. I recommend in the beginning to come close to the surface because it immediately forces you to look through. Because it's hard to convince your eyes to look through a wall because your brain goes, what do you mean through a wall? There's no reason to do that, so it's hard to do. But if you are next to it, then you can see like inside because automatically you're too close, right? But if you go far and you already saw the code, you will just see the code inside. You would just see, like, look at the line, whatever band is hitting the wall, and you would just see it inside. Just like the light would be a window, and you're just looking through the window, albeit very, very narrow window, but
Yep.
Yeah,
Matthew,
that's
I have the
interesting
same
because
confusion as well as Matthew earlier. So I think you're getting stuck on looking through the wall.
Right.
It's not literally looking through the physical wall. It just seems like you're looking through the wall, and you can do this without being on the molecule. You can
Yeah.
put the laser up on the wall, and you can look through it. You can understand how it feels to look through it. It's like the magic eye thing. You can do that without the molecule and look through it. That's what we mean. It's not literally looking through a physical object.
right, yeah. The other thing there I would add based on what Matthew said to Matthew would be, no, actually what you said, Danny, about, or maybe it was Matthew, I don't know. Somebody said a high amount of the molecule, and a high enough amount of the molecule, and you're going to be in a different dimension. You're not going to be
Let me
looking
back
through
up.
the wall.
Let me back up for a
there's
second.
not going to be any wall or spoons.
Is this an invalid? Like, I guess my question is this an invalid thought? This is stupid. This doesn't
The-
really make sense, but bear with me. Just I'm playing with some conceptions. If I took all the light that was in the room I'm currently in, I'm sitting in my bedroom. There's light in it.
Okay.
If I replace that light with the light of this laser diffracted light.
Oh, I see what
And
you're
now
saying.
the
But you're
entire
saying if it
room-
would be if the light would be illuminating the room.
Yes, that
Okay.
everything the
I
every
understand.
observer in the room is witnessing is the laser light itself. So, like, imagine all the light bulbs in the room cast this.
Right.
I get it.
Right.
I get it. You're seeing something like the Matrix from the classic scene with Neo in the
Yeah,
Matrix
that's
when he's in the
what I should
hallway.
have
Right.
started
So
with
if-
that, right?
No,
Yeah,
right.
like,
So
I wanna
if
look
everything
like I'm
looks the
standing in
same.
the room of the code.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
would
It
need.
doesn't look like I'm standing in the room with the code. This is. I should have just done that. Everybody on here is like, that's like the core example would have made it the easiest to understand. I want to feel like I'm standing in the room with the code all around me.
All
Is
around
there
you, yeah.
a way that you can theorize that we could create a laser harness like that can create that perception?
Matthew, hold just one thought. If you do that, my guess is that the reality itself will collapse in on itself.
This is like-
Excellent. So we have to try to falsify it. Let's see if we get.
Also put okay. I have to, I know this is silly, but I have to do this because I've had weird comments sometimes on my videos. What I'm about to say is completely a joke, which absolutely ruins this joke. Okay, but and then in addition to that, you should take 2 lasers and just shine them into your eyes like this, and just look everywhere. Because I actually, I sometimes joked about things like that, and people actually
I'm
emailed me.
picturing like a old coal miner, like if you did this in a coal mine, where coming out of your coal mining hat was the diffracted laser.
Right. So in order to achieve that, so now I understand what you wanted to say. Your idea is that the light, there's something about the light that invokes either the viewing of the code or the code. So if you project it from a light bulb, this kind of light,
Yeah,
you would get
there's
right.
two
So
components, the mole and the laser.
Right.
So I like to break them down into their components and really dial in on all the like nuts and bolts. Of
Right,
that.
but
so, yeah,
just-
I need to dice apart the lasers.
So just from the light perspective, forget about the mole for a second. Just the light perspective, you will need a very specialized kind of way of projecting this laser in a way that it doesn't lose the diffracted element of itself. And this is why my question to Chase was because it's not
that's
that
the hard
clear.
part.
Because a light bulb will not work. You need a coherent light. That's one of the prerequisites to see this. And even a laser pointer will not work. So you need the diffraction. So the only way to achieve what you're saying, it's possible, but you're gonna need, let's say, a little ball that has like a bunch of these diodes sticking out in all directions and just kind of like covering most of the room, basically. That's what you're gonna need.
Okay. I'll take that back as I'll try to spec out some stuff. I'll play with the AI and see if it comes up with some ideas about how to maybe achieve that as a secondary thing. That's interesting. I want to broaden, like my objective would be to broaden the experiment manifold of this.
Yep.
That's sort of my intention.
Okay, yeah, I would be excited if you do. James, did you want to say something, or who was it that was?
Yeah, I was just randomly, several years ago now, I was in a bathroom with a vaporizer and with mirrors that were facing each other, and then shooting a laser back and forth. So the laser beams were hitting each other, like line up the laser to just a perfect angle. So the laser beam was coming back into itself. And then with the vapor, you can see in the air, and you can see the light, the speed of light in opposite directions, the laser crashing into each other. And I was thinking about the Large Hadron Collider back then, but I was thinking about the field. And I in meditation and in nature and in a good headspace, I can see like a field of energy that nature fits perfectly into. But I'm trying to connect this to this matrix field that I've seen in other like more physical ways. I'm really curious about these goggles. I would love to have that experience.
Oh, you're talking about the dicyanin or what are they called? These goggles? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I came in late on your introduction to the.
Oh no, it's not. We never spoke about it today. I guess there's this thing called if anybody correct me here how to actually pronounce it. They sign in glasses where you have like this material inside and you're supposed to be able to see auras and energies and things like that. And it sounds completely wild, but there's this channel House of what is it?
Museum of Tarot.
Yeah, what is it?
Museum of Tarot.
Museum of Terror, exactly. And he is a scientist, I think a neuroscientist, but he kind of investigates a lot of these things. And they actually make it, like his company makes it. And from what I understand, you can straight up see things. So this would be an interesting thing to experiment with the laser. So people always tell me, can you see it in 3D in the air? Can you put smoke? So it's a natural tendency to think this. I obviously tried it anyway, but it was clear to me that it's never going to work because the smoke is a random scattering. You need enough photons to come back from one direction into your eye to actually form a coherent image. So smoke will just scatter the photons, so you can see the beam moving through, but you will never get something from the air back to your eyes, right? There is a way to do this, actually using mirrors, but as far as I know, there's only one company in the world that managed to do this so far. Maybe Chase will correct me, but that they managed to create like a full-on, straight up, not an illusion of, but like a real hologram, by using very, very precise measurement mirrors and light to actually create an image in the center. And that is a very complicated thing to do. However, it is interesting what you're saying, because a lot of people offer this, and every time I'm just a little weary to use mirrors and lasers at the same time while we're on the molecule, because, dude, too much of the light directly into your cornea, not a good idea. So I'm usually staying away from that. But maybe it's time to try and, come up with some kind of a design that's going to be not necessarily dangerous. Maybe like put it above us and then see if what you're saying can actually, we can actually see what you're saying, which is like the beams. I don't even know what you should be able to see when light moves through itself. But
Danny, I would say, and maybe this has come up in your conversations and your dealings with the contacts at the University of London, Imperial College, right? I would imagine they have colleagues there in some pretty sophisticated laser labs.
They have so yeah, exactly. But my best bet is actually John Dean in San Diego, because they have first of all, it's much closer, and second of all, as you know, the second you get a grant to do a research, you have to follow the protocol that you submitted to the T. So even if it's a tiny departure of like just add a laser and the thing, they can't. They're gonna lose the whatever money they got. So you need a whole new research plan that includes the laser, which eventually hopefully will come to fruition, hopefully sooner than later. But yeah, I agree with you that ultimately putting it in one of the extended states research, combine it with whatever they're already doing, would definitely be a huge boost forward in whatever the research would look like.
Right, and is that a conversation that, if you don't mind me asking,
No,
if I'm
not with Imperial, but John Dean, I kind of I told him what's going on. Super nice guy, by the way. I highly recommend to follow what he's doing. He's starting the same thing in San Diego. Well, they already started. They're just crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's with all the regulatory entities from this dimension and the other dimension. And they next year they're going to start doing it. So they're going to do the same thing as in the Imperial College in London. And he's the leading scientist. I met with him. I told him about the whole thing. He didn't try it yet, but he is very open-minded. So I think there's no reason to believe that eventually he won't at least put it into the protocol. But I don't have a way to know. I'm not him. I'm not speaking for him. But I'm in contact with him. He knows about it. So I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I'm curious. Further, I'll just probe one more question here,
Please.
and then I'll mute myself. I don't want to compromise.
Bro, what are you? Are you kidding me? I love when you come on.
Oh well.
Yeah.
But no, I'm curious. In relation to the molecule specifically, and the conversations had there, with that group, have they shared any additional? Maybe relatively new information about extended state trials. I've seen a few of the guys give interviews to various podcasts and that sort of thing. And there's some really intriguing things they've shared in those few and far between interviews, especially with regard to their interactions with the entities.
Yeah, so the entities was the focus in the previous run of the experiment. I don't know what to call it. Season 1. That they were focusing on analyzing encounters with entities, and they had a very sophisticated psychological questionnaire that they prepared by first, obviously, going through like all the little details with all the subjects, making sure that you understand kind of like where they fall on some of the major psychological parameters, and then right when they come out of it, they would ask you a series of questions designed to get as much concrete information about your experience as possible in a way that is the easiest to answer, so you don't have to think about complex answers. And then they grade you. They have like a grade on, like, for example, level of profundity, level of kind of like encounters with something that feels like the divine. And it sounds like extremely esoteric concepts, but they have a really good way to gauge what these scales are, and then they kind of ask questions along those lines. Now, season 2, they already started. They're also interested in seeing if it's possible to move any information from one mind to the other by using both of them at the same time. So they had people who never met each other before, and then they run the experiment on both of them at the same time, and they want to see if there's any even slight hint of telepathy. Basically, that's kind of like the next round of what they're trying to focus on.
Hey, Danny, quick question. So in your experience with the mole and doing it with like groups of friends, have you ever had a shared experience while everyone was in at the same time?
One time in which I know for sure, there was this girl that I was doing it with, and she said that she sees something in the corner of the room, and I saw it too. She said it first, and I'm very, whatever the absolute opposite of hyperbolic is, I'm trying to be as downgrade everything to like the most, the least interesting. And I know I saw what she was describing. So one time for sure I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, I've had that same experience as well, so it'll be nice for Imperial to get that documented in season 2.
Oh yeah, that would actually be a great part of the research. One quick thing, because I wanted to ask this for a while. That's just my OCD talking, because I can't let it go because I don't know what that means. Create with Christopher, you said way, like 30 minutes ago probably, oscillators or just waveform. Have you looked at the adjustable engraves like on 3D printers? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Maybe one of you guys understand what that means. In light, I think laser is in light. I think he means lens. I'm not sure if you mean that laser is not light. It absolutely is. The mole is the molecule, the spirit molecule. I want to give a little bit of attention to the comments before I let you guys keep discussing this. Laser beams, brain. Oh, this is interesting.
Dr. Strassman?
Listen, Dr. Strassman is. We can talk about him, but I feel like he's a little bit irrelevant at this point. He as far as the research is concerned, he's one of the pioneers, obviously, and his honor is in his place. But at this point, he also, I don't know if you know, but he became. His later books that kind of like focus on this whole religious element, which I find a little bizarre.
Yeah, no worries. You just mentioned the spirit molecule, and he
Oh yeah. Well, he's the one that founded the whole modern portion of the research.
Yeah, and someone mentioned studies were under extended exposure.
Oh yeah, so he was involved in the original kind of like helping them figure out because he did it in Albuquerque in the 90s, and then he helped them somewhat in the beginning to figure out the protocols for the thing.
There were aspects of the extended state trials at Imperial College that I don't know if you've seen yet, Danny, but I'd like to share them because I think they're of value.
Please, do you mind?
Maybe these
Don't share yet. I gotta run to the bathroom real quick because I'm gonna explode. You guys talk about something else for 10 seconds, but then I want to hear it. Also, just a quick comment that I really loved. Somebody said, Carp 3D13M said, laser beams like Lazarus. This is great. Hold on.
Yeah, so Strassman, came up with the extended state trial with Dr. Andrew Gallimore. And so Danny, as far as I'm aware, and if it's of any interest to you guys, you can ask him when he comes back. But as far as I'm aware, Danny is in contact with Gallimore, and arguably Gallimore, that's Dr. Andrew Gallimore, is the leading NN-DMT and 5-MeO DMT, global subject
Level
matter.
saying the actual thing. Sorry.
Yeah, try not to say the actual molecule.
Oh, okay. So I'll just call it mold, then that's fine. But yeah, if you guys aren't familiar, he's got a few books, Alien Information Theory. He just released a second book. I forget the name of it. It's in the office here. All right, they were right next to me, but I don't know the name of it. But great books about the mole, specifically on how the mole rebuilds kind of the default mode network that falls away once you consume the mole. Yeah.
Is it, you describing a book that talks about this?
I was mentioning Strassman and Gallimore's relationship, and my assumption. I think you're in contact with Gallimore, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested. I think Strassman back in the 90s, he was putting them in for what, like 30 to 45 minutes at a time, and then Imperial's recent, where they're going in for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm really interested to see. I know Danny was speaking about last time. I mean, we could put people in for 24 hours at a time to see what they come back with.
Yeah, the extended state trial that they developed uses a PID device to administer the mole via or intravenously, right? A PID being proportional integral derivative device, and so I think Imperial, if I recall correctly, at least in phase 1, it wasn't more than an hour. It might have been 40 or 45 minutes, something like that, or maybe they even started with
40 minutes I think is the longest.
Right. Yeah. But some of the reports that from the guys involved in the study included things about meeting each other, right? So it would make sense that would be phase 2, because it's something that I've seen them report in phase 1, sharing information, going to the same environments together, being told by the entities that they don't like the way that they're approaching the study on more than one occasion.
Really? I've never heard that one before. Who was talking about it? Was it Alex?
Yeah.
Really?
There's 2 specific guys that I've seen interviews with.
So Alex Boehner is the most vocal. He's the one who wrote The Bigger Picture. Highly recommended, by the way. Is that the guy you're talking about?
Maybe.
Okay. Is he like a younger guy?
So I recall the study lead kind of looks like you. He's got long hair, I think. Maybe I could be mistaken, but he's got long hair, black facial hair. There's an assistant that's supporting him in phase, or was. I don't know where the study is now, if they're in phase 2 or what, but he had the assistant. And then I think Alex was one of the like you said, the more vocal guys.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I actually never heard of
guys.
That's so funny that he's
right?
like they're passing judgment. By the way, I want to say Carp 3D13M, you're becoming one of my favorites, man. Like, there's a second comment that is a banger by you. The comment is sharks with laser beams attached to their heads. I definitely want that experiment done. This is just swimming with sharks with lasers while you're on one of the beams. Now, if that's not an experience, I don't know what is. But, let's see. Let's between
Hey,
conditions.
Danny, I'm about to head to bed.
Oh,
I
okay,
wanted
Matthew.
to just drop you one thing to consider, because I like James's idea about some sort of alternative paradoxical setups. And there was one I was looking at a while back. Maybe I'll go take a look. Like paradoxical setups with mirrors that create what seem to be new spaces that with information that needs to be discerned. So there was this one setup where if you picture taking like a camera, if you took your iPhone and you use two mirrors to reflect around and have the camera record its own viewfinder, this was also opening up weird spaces where things were happening. So I'll leave it.
Wait. I want to understand its own viewfinder. Please educate.
Yeah, so you have a camera like on your iPhone. You bounce it off one mirror, and then it'll bounce off a mirror slightly behind the camera, where the mirror behind you can view its own viewfinder.
What is a viewfinder?
And
Sorry,
you'll
I don't know what
see
that
it.
is.
Like the screen you're looking at, like if you're taking a picture on your iPhone, you're looking at the screen on
Oh,
your phone.
okay.
That's
So
the
got it.
viewfinder.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you're trying to record your own viewfinder
Okay.
using two mirrors.
Oh, okay, I understand. So it's infinite regress, right? You see the infinite
Yeah,
space,
exactly.
right?
It
Okay.
creates an infinite regress, but when you do it recording your own viewfinder, there were some experiments where it was creating spaces and weird things were happening in there.
Really?
So I had an idea, if you kind of cast the laser in the middle of this madness, what would happen? Right?
Only one way to find out.
That's a really interesting experiment, Matthew. Yeah, Danny, I think Matthew's referring to a rather popularized ghost experiment by people that claim to be mediums.
That's correct.
Or something, right? I forget the name of the experiment, but I've seen this recently, actually. Yeah.
The footage was compelling, and it made me get up and actually try it real quick on my iPhone. And to be honest, there was some weird shit going on, but it was really hard to keep the configuration right and get a good look at it.
What do you mean by weird things? What kind of weird things?
The infinite regress does start to seem to form a space.
Well, in the experiment that you referred to, I mean, they saw faces that were
Exactly.
the
video is compelling.
They had faces and all kinds of various things, but very distinctive faces. You know, this wasn't a pareidolia or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out, but my thoughts on that is if you do that and you're viewing through the viewfinder over and over again, you will see the infinite regress, right, of course, but you also lose quality every time it bounces back and forth because it's going through the processor and it's going through the AI filtering, and that's where faces could appear over time. So if you could turn all that stuff off, then maybe there's something there, but you would still lose quality.
That's a good point. The experiment in reference, though, was captured way before autocorrective technology or any kind of use of narrow AI. But with respect to modern tech, yeah, that is a really good point. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just brainstorming those things to try to set up some paradoxical setups. Because the other notion I had inside this is to increase safety, because Danny had mentioned multiple times about with the laser entering your eyes and it could be harmful.
Well,
is
with
there
the
any way to increase the safety?
with the mirror, you're always going to be running. With the mirror, you're always going to be running a risk. That's why I'm usually.
Well, crossing my fingers, the recording. If you mix a viewfinder in this madness, maybe I'm going to look for safety ways, because I think maybe what you're also saying is that, it takes a little while for this to develop. I'll have to look at it myself, when the code appears. But it seems like also as we get towards extended state experiences, is there any safety concerns around eye damage? I guess that's the question I'm wondering about.
Extended state, you mean like in a lab? Like if they put it in the lab?
Like if you're staring into this, we'll call it the aperture that we were talking about, or you were talking about even shining lasers in your eyes, or if you're
No. That like I said, that was a joke. See, that was
Okay. On that note, I'll sign off. But then there's no safety concerns. I'm gonna work on the headlamp. All right, have a good one, guys.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Good to see you. Also, quick response to 60 feet 6 inches. Why a laser? I'm not sure. That's the truth. I don't know why diffracted. I don't know why laser, but it seems that that's the only combo at the moment that works. My brain is too small. The clips. Okay, amazing. Also, let me focus here. Also, and look through them. Yeah, the business? Did you say that they made the diacinine? How do you pronounce this? Diacinine glasses illegal? Why? On what basis?
It's dicyanide.
Dicyanide.
They're not-
Yeah, thank you.
They're not illegal. Not at all. There are a lot of knockoffs sold online. Museum of Tarot sells legitimate stuff. The guy's kind of a pompous ass.
You talking about what's his face? Oh, I'm just mentioning him because I know they're selling it, not because of.
No.
Yeah.
I don't really care if he's an
Yeah.
ass or not, but I've heard these a little rude to people. But I like him. I like his content. But yeah, no, those are legitimate. We have a pair here. If you buy a pair, you've got to modify them. The frames that he sells them in, at least the model that we have, which was the only one that he was selling when we purchased it about a year ago.
Do you?
really-
So you
really
see extra content? You see what people would describe as auras and all that stuff?
So we haven't used these very much because the frames are really hard and they have to be modified. And admittedly, we haven't modified them.
Okay.
But if they were comfortable and you wore these for long enough, yeah, you'd start seeing all that stuff. I know I mentioned to you that I supported Lou and almost went to work for To the Stars. Part of that relationship was working on, because my background is instrumentation and control systems. I'm an automation SME. So part of that was hyperspectral imaging. And looking at UAP, UFOs, orbs, unknowns through ultraviolet, infrared, and vis parts of the spectrum. A lot of things you can see in UV, long range UV and IR, and also through the Dyson. But it's just another part of the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, just to remind everybody, I said in the beginning of the conversation to anybody who missed, I have a hard out at 8, so we have another 18 minutes. So we'll definitely stay here till then. But then if anybody's in the middle of a rant, we're gonna have to stop the rant. But we have another 18 minutes, so all the power to us. Let's see.
Hey, I just had a question. Is there any difference shooting the laser against something natural like a tree against something machine-made? Like
So far, no. Yeah, I know. These are the most natural questions. I think that ultimately, and I would expect actually to see a difference, but so far, no luck.
So, Danny, speaking theoretically or philosophically rather here, what are you, like, what's your current position? Because, I mean, I've shared with you that I've had experiences with the mole that have taken me completely out and seen this experience. I've had experiences with entities that explain that this was essentially something that they created. I watched part of that creation, and they told me why they were doing what they were doing, and it was essentially that they were studying consciousness, and we had experiences, and certain experiences provided them with certain information about the nature of consciousness itself. So I'm curious if this code, like if I were to observe the code, having had those experiences that I've had, my philosophical perspective would be that that's essentially just architectural code, right?
Yeah,
What do we do with it?
I don't know. But the
Is
fact,
there really anything to do with it since we're in it? Can the code observe the code and make something happen?
I always equated to that question arising when they discovered quantum mechanics originally, because it was not clear at all if it will ever be relevant to human life. Like, it was actually always postulated that it will never be, because it's way too out there. Like, we understand something about the mechanics of the universe, but it will never be relevant to what we're doing here. And then less than 2 decades, it made transistors possible. It made lasers possible. It made a lot of things that without it would not be possible. So, but I don't know. That's the honest truth. Like, I think we have to I think this is one of the reasons I put it out, because I wanted more brilliant minds to weigh in on it and figure it out. Because I definitely, this is not something I think I could have ever done by myself. So, and this is why I say in my first video, I don't even think that the laser is the discovery. I think the discovery is going to be made by all of us. And it will include basically all people from all walks of life and all walks of expertise. And it's almost like the ultimate puzzle that we're supposed to solve. but maybe it's just as simple as here's what the source code is doing. Okay, when you use a very powerful magnet, look at it changing this way. Interesting. Okay, what does it connect to? I don't know. When you use this very powerful magnet and you project it to this material, here's what happens. Interesting. I wonder what that means. Okay, great. So when we see this content, this happens. Okay, can we now see it, which as a lot of people tell me after seeing it for the first time, thank you for the likes, Nico. They say, well, sometimes I see the code now on the regular. Is it something your brain fills in now because it knows it's there? Or is it actually learning how to look at the code without the molecule? I don't know. If it is the case, okay, we put it into ChatGPT, we see if we can see a pattern. Maybe there is a pattern, maybe there isn't a pattern. When we make the change with the magnet, is there a change in the way that ChatGPT, deciphering something about the pattern from directly recording from your cornea, from your cortex? Yes change, no change. So this is all the types of experimentation that I'm imagining, right? Okay, so you take it through all these levels, and eventually maybe you get to a point where you say, well, look, this is interesting. When you do the magnet, so maybe there's some kind of a precondition with making the code available for modification first. So like you have to do a lot of things first. You have like a safety mechanism. You have to punch in a bunch of things. In other words, you have to use a magnet in this particular direction. This is the cosine. You have to use this particular material and this exact angle. You have to be in this particular state. So maybe you have to use chemical modification, or you learn how to do it by yourself. When all of these things align, maybe there's an ability to influence the code and maybe even either rewrite it or bend the laws of physics, or like, I'm obviously like going crazy speculation here, right? But these are the kinds of things that I'm imagining potentially can happen, but I have no idea. One thing is clear, it's visible. So I would assume that would be for a reason. I don't know. Or at least that it's not a secret, you know?
The code, I've asked you this before, and the guidance you've given me was, I don't know, middle of the road, 15 milligrams, something like that, right? To have this particular experience and not be shot out into another. But I'm curious, those experiences in which you've been shot out into another, if you had any with entities that you perceived and believe are completely autonomous, intelligent entities that have discussed this, or you've discussed with them this.
Oh yeah, they talk to me all the time.
I'm curious, what's discussed?
Oh yeah, well.
Did you say that some of them don't want you to pursue like getting the code out?
No, some of them, not me, that some of them in general, they say, so if you have to kind of put it in our regular terms of how we do things, it's essentially that there's no consensus. So like some of them are team subspecies should never know. Some of them in general, not just the laser, like they should not know we're real. Basically, that's kind of like that's the political party. Lower beings should not know we're real, okay? For whatever various reasons. Maybe they have a concern for psychological reasons. Maybe they think it might damage something about the system itself. Some of them are like, well, no, what do you mean? Like everybody else, they have a right to know. So like there's a it's not always clear cut. And for example, one of the last interactions I've had, they had one of these like, sometimes you're watching from the side, like they just argue, right? And you're like, okay, well, listen, this has to be clear. Like you make a decision. I don't know who's talking. Like, is it your courts? Like who's the decision maker, right? Or is it completely up for grabs? And then if it's visible, it's visible. If you don't want it to be known, pass a law, make it invisible, make it undiscoverable. But it's completely arbitrary to allow for a function that is possible for a being to know, and then tell them, can you pretend you don't know? Like that's silly, right? So it's not clear. But before I released the first video, I asked multiple times on multiple occasions. I was like, hey, like I'm gonna talk about this. Is this okay? And in the beginning, I wasn't really sure because sometimes it's kind of like ambiguous, not in the answer, but like you don't always understand exactly what the message is. But they straight up, one of them came in and like pointed to the laser, so to speak. And there was like, just like when you do this on the screen, this, See the hearts? Like that. There was just like hearts. So I was like, okay. So
It's almost
yes.
like the story of Prometheus bringing fire to the human race. That he was like defying Zeus by doing that, you know. So it's almost like in the ethereal realm, like you're saying, there's not a strong consensus of like, all right, do we give them this information or do we not? So it's like, but you're somewhat of Prometheus trying to bring it to us.
Or yeah, but and again, you know, it's for the obvious reasons. I would always like to imagine it's a little bit less dramatic than that. But it's I think that ultimately it's kind of like, you know, again, it's nature, right? There's certain things that you can know that can potentially be dangerous, but I think that statistically it is always the case that 99% of the time you want to know, even if it's a thing that can have hazardous abilities, because you want to understand, not to step over that line, right? So like every time, it's always better to know. So that's really where I land on this.
It's almost like, you know, the Global Consciousness Project, where they're like measuring random number generators placed around the globe and seeing how consciousness, like when there's like coherence in the consciousness field, how it affects like random number generators. It's almost kind of what's similar of what, you know, you discovering this code, but now the next step, like person asks, like, all right, what do we do with the code? Now, the next step would be like, okay, how can we affect what the code is doing? That would be the next step, right?
Consciousness.
Good.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So PAIR, that was originally out of the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, right? And that sits over, I think IONS is still managing the Global Consciousness Project. That's still ongoing as far as...
Wait, can you guys tell me about it? Because I'm not familiar.
Yeah,
It's a Princeton thing I sent you.
version of it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cal did send me this. Okay, I went over this. I understand. Okay.
But so like, maybe diving a little higher or lower depending on your perspective. What is it then that you theorize based on your experiences is actually happening with respect to DMT? Because I'm seeing, we've talked about this connection before. I'm seeing a lot of emergent patterns in the work of Stuart Hameroff and Penrose, right? A lot of emergent patterns in this idea that, it's proof now. We have proof that the microtubule in the brain and the rest of the body are interfacing with the vibratory quantum field, right? And we have models structured out of Hoffman's work of these four-dimensional structures that sit outside of space-time that have all the features of three-dimensional space-time bounded within them, right?
Okay.
And we've had experiences with the mole where we go and are in other bodies, what people refer to as past lives, parallel lives, whatever. That's the same thing. The reincarnation, the life review experience, out-of-body experiences, like all of these things, alien abduction experiences. I'm speaking to personal experience for all of those as well. Like, so where do you stand on that? Because I'm not dismissing this study at all. I think the study is incredibly fascinating, and I think it's going to be really fruitful. And I love what the guys at Imperial Ecology are doing as well. But just again, on the philosophical side, what is it that we experience with this?
So I think I appreciate the question, and as you know, I always appreciate your perspective. It's obviously a big conundrum, always proceed with caution. But I think from a technical standpoint, what I gather so far is that the molecule is fuel, and you still need navigation. So, and it is not navigation; it is just a fuel. So basically, what I think is happening is that it basically gives you, just like in an engine, you need a certain amount of energy to move the pistons at a certain speed, right? It allows for more of the speed of the pistons, so it allows more frames per second of reality, whatever it is, in all its totality. So if right now, not just a visual field, but just the frames per second of computational steps that your brain can take in any given moment of what reality really is, right? And then you have a certain amount of fuel of it in your intracranial liquid in any given moment that gives you an ability to perceive this, whatever this is, okay? You add some of it, and it has this feeling of ramping up. It goes like you get like more frames per second or whatever it is. So now you perceive more of what's possible to perceive. I do know that it's a navigation is still required, because when they want to take me there, like to whatever that is, they would bring in this machine that I can see right when I start, and it's like this thing that comes in and it sits around my head. It has like a round, it doesn't really matter. It has like a round thing on the top and like 2 arms, and it again is coherent as a mug. Like I can see it, like it's right in front of me every time, if I are going somewhere. And then I feel changes in my energetic field that it basically induces that. They know I don't know how to do that. We probably can learn how to, and probably some people do, but they know I can't. So they do it for me. They basically make my energy, I can feel it. Like some energetic centers like being deactivated, some activated, like and then it also has a pace. It's not just that some are activated and deactivated. It has a like a sequence, like a code for a lock. It goes like here, and then it slowly, it's almost like deflates, and then goes up, and then there's percolate here, for example, right? And then after that, there's the arms and the thing, they vibrate the energy in the room, and I can feel it in my entire body into a particular frequency, and I've noticed by the pitch that they differ. So first the energetic centers, and also the particular pitch of the frequency is different. So they go, the whole room, and then I go, and I just go to whatever it is. So that does the navigation. So we can navigate energetically. That's what you asked me what I think is, where does this lie? The molecule just gives you a lot of fuel. It gives you a lot of fuel to experience whatever. This is why when you don't know what you're doing, and you don't have an experienced shaman, or you just do it, all you do is pour a bunch of fuel. So it goes into turbo mode, but if you don't know how to navigate, it just goes like, it just goes somewhere. And that's why sometimes you just land into like a insane land, right? So then basically that's what I think that's where it lays. And then and in addition to that, you have the higher structures. You can go to different levels, you can go to different places, and it's an actual map. There's like a coordinates, and there's a way to get there. And you can meet different kinds of beings that live in this region of that space, and other beings that live in that region of the space. And yeah, so that's how I see it from like a technical standpoint.
Fascinating. That's incredibly fascinating. My experiences, while I've had varied, that I covered, right before you responded, that mainframe kind of experience, right? Because I'm familiar with going into, I think, what people refer to as the waiting room, which I refer to as a shoebox with a second story.
Why shoebox?
Plants. I don't know. That's what it reminds me of. It feels like I'm in a shoebox with a second story, if that makes any sense, and a bunch of house plants, and then I'm shot out, But it's always been relatively random. I've been in space. I've been with the entities and other bodies and stuff like that. But that's that. So it's always this device, this headset device.
If they're taking me up there, yeah. If it's not always, they don't always take. So like I would see the console appear, and then that thing, as far as I understand, what is not part of the console.
What do they look like? You say if they're
they have all kinds. They have all kinds. A lot of them look like insects. They have like a whole. I think that again, I know that for anybody who's not partaking in these things, it just sounds like what? Okay, I'm getting off the train, but I'm just reporting. A lot of them look kind of like very insect-like, and like I would say like full-on insect. Like there's the big spider that Alex was actually talking about. I've seen her before. She's kind of like this queen spider that holds all the possible knowledge in her belly. You can see her. You can get there pretty reliably. There's some of them are more kind of amphibian lizard-like. The ones that seem to be weaving our part of reality, they're insects. So they have like hive mind. They have like the decision is always made kind of like by the little up and down votes. It's almost like insect Twitter, insect X, and then they kind of like upvote and downvote with their like what they want, and then that's how decisions are made. And then they are the ones weaving this part of reality. Now there's others that they do something completely different. Like from what I understand, the ones that are more like lizard-like amphibian, they are the intermediates between what people I guess would call I call them the blues, but I know there's a name for it. People like call them something. I discovered this only recently, but they're kind of like more noble. They're kind of like the holders of knowledge. So they kind of like, you know, when they walk in, it's almost like they're adults in the room, and there's everything is kind of like up, right? And then they walk in. It's almost like a hum when they're around. It's almost like that. And then there's all kinds. There's another space that I can enter inside of the molecule that is like a different space. Inside, there's another space where they know I don't know how to do this, so they have to do it for me. I know, I don't know how I know this, but what they do is they make my energetic circulation, whatever the torus is, they make it perfect. And I can feel it through my entire body. I always describe it as like the perfect feeling of when you pop a soda can and the fizzle, it kind of like feels like that throughout my entire body, just like, and then I know that the torus is like perfect in its manifestation, and I enter into this new space that feels like, I guess more kind of like more the control room. It's like you're behind the scenes now. It's like now you're seeing like really peeking behind the scenes, and it has like you can see a lot more of the machinery happening. And it also has a little bit more of the divine element into it. So it's okay, you know that's
Are
the
you talking about the dome space?
No, it's in the room. I'm talking about like I'm standing in the room. When you go out there, then there's all kinds of characters that I just described. One guy that always appears for me, I guess you can call him the clock, machine elf, but he's kind of like more like a Joker, and he just jumps around a lot. He moves very fast. And he's very vain, and he's vain in a very open way. Like it's not an insult. Like he's very kind of like he gets tremendous respect. So he's very powerful. I know this because when he appears, everybody just kind of like stand still, like don't move. But he appears and he's just kind of like, all right, I'm controlling the show, and he's like, bah, 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 bah. He just jumps around. And he's like, look at me, I can do this. Da, 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 da. He does all this crazy stuff. When he enters, the energy is just like wow, like it's just insane, right? Like circus. And there's like infinite stuff of this, but this is why I always say that focus on the beings. Even though I do think it's important to map that, I do feel like I always say this. You probably heard me say this too, but I do feel that it's a little arbitrary. Like it's like going to New York and asking a random guy on the street if they understand something about the nature of reality. Who knows who that person is, right? I think understanding the nature of the space, what we can do with the space, where we are in relationship to all of this, I think that's a much more important line of questions than trying to just talk to different beings, which is also important, but I'm putting my money on understanding the space rather than understanding the beings. That's where I sit.
I know we're almost out of time, but I did have a question about the frequency you hear. I know it's a common thing before you go there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could play a sound frequency so you can
I'll
figure
give
out
you
what it is?
somebody makes this perfect sound. There's a really shitty documentary about Terence McKenna. We're gonna fix that. It's called True Hallucinations, 3 hours long. I'm gonna find the exact moment where they make, because you know the famous experiment that Dennis and Terence ran in La Chorrera, and one of the functions of that experiment was to make that sound with your mouth. And I think it was Terence who was doing it in the movie. I'll find that exact timestamp and I'll send it to you. That's the exact sound. It's like this ascending, like, but he makes the sound like perfect. And that's the sound, and it is a variation of that sound. Now, what I hear, to make that distinction, which by the way, so you remember when I said that they changed something about my brain after I built the laser?
Yeah.
So since they changed it, I don't hear that sound anymore at all. I see that machine coming in, and the frequency that I feel, it's more like, do you have a dog?
Yes, I do.
You know when they cry, almost you can barely hear it. It's almost like the thinnest whistle, right? They go like
Yes.
like this weird thing. Okay, like that. It's almost like an inaudible frequency, but it has that's the spectrum where it's at. But you can if you pay close attention, you can hear the difference between them. And by the way, on strong mushrooms, you can hear I know because it has the same pattern of the where it moves, but it's much thicker. So if next time anybody is doing pizza toppings, try this. If you are deep in the space, you need to go into like heroic dose. You need to be like 5 at least. When you start hearing the sound, there's a hum, and it's more like like that. Notice that when you postulate all kinds of things, they talk to you by the frequency. Depending on if they say yes or no, they go up and down. And it's not like if you just actually play with it, you'll see that they're actually talking to you. This is not like you imagining it. No, they're talking to you. Like you say, wait, you ask a yes or no question, and they go like they go up, down, like they tell yes or no, basically.
Okay, this is very close to where I was going with question about the frequency.
Tibetan throat chanting
first
is
I wanna
exactly what it
un-
sounds like. 60 feet, 6 inch. Go ahead.
So if you can, it sounds like we can easily reproduce the frequency or get really close to it. If you play that frequency while you're on a low dose, similar to when you're looking at the laser, could you potentially hear the code or hear a
Yeah,
code?
yeah, yeah.
Hear
Oh,
some
you don't
modulation?
even have to work that hard. If you play random frequency with your headphones, so like if I tried 42 hertz, 100 hertz, I'm pretty sure any random frequency would work, but these are the ones I tried. You can hear the space in the laser. Because they communicate, they need,
Say that again, I'm sorry, you could hear what?
you can hear the space in the laser.
You can hear the space and so the movement of the code in the laser is correlated to what you hear.
It's not the movement, but you know you're hearing inside the space. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you know, it's almost like you hear the hall. There's like it's almost like a giant hall or a dome or something, and you're hearing the inside of it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
where I was headed. I wanted to understand.
Yeah,
if there's
yeah,
some kind of
yeah. So
connection
this
there.
is another thing that we can probably open up tomorrow. That they need a canvas to paint on in order to communicate content to you. And what they use is randomized stochastic patterns. So in fact, if you walk into the bathroom, and this is what people call audible hallucinations, they're not hallucinations. When you walk into the bathroom and the fan, that would qualify for a random stochastic pattern, like and you would hear things in it. Like it's almost like they need that to carry that's the medium that they send the signal through, and that's also why random patterns, like if you have a painting that has enough complexity in it, but it's not really the well-defined thing, like it's more kind of like woo whatever modern art. Okay, when you do that, they can do a lot with that. They can actually present a lot of things on the screen. But if it's too rigid, it's just like a couple of elements, it's harder. So they need some kind of a level of randomness to be able to communicate something to you, both on the audible and in the visual.
That's interesting. So the laser is something that's not as random, right? And then they use something that
And I think the surfaces are basically it is interesting because even the code is a little different because you can see it even on a non-random thing because it's making the whole thing, so it does feel a little different. But I'm talking about the more macro content, like and a lot of times they would just play with you, like they would just like make all kinds of wild things for you.
So would you say it's not as concrete as the code then?
It doesn't. No, it's almost like the difference between the TV and you clearly seeing that it's pixels in the TV. Like that's the difference.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Guys, I'm gonna kind of super short. I apologize. I know this is super abrupt, but I have to go at 8 today. We're almost on time, and that's amazing. We're practicing. Tomorrow I'm gonna try and start a little earlier than 6. But I'll also put the second I know, I'll post it so it kind of notifies people that it's coming on. Thank you so much, everybody. I deeply appreciate all the questions and all the people who engage, all the regulars, the business, Chase, James, Cal, Matthew, Sean. Thank you so much, everybody. And again, anybody in the chat that feels like maybe I ignored some important comment, feel free to email me, lasersimulationx@gmail.com. And we are here every single day. So I'm sure that eventually we'll be able to talk. Peace and love, everybody. See you guys tomorrow.
Peace.
Hit the like button. And yes, please hit the like button. I always forget to say. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Oh, wait, let me see. Candle flames being... Let me answer this. Mr. Z, because I realized I was ignoring your comments. Not on purpose. I was just in the chat. Any beings that look like flames and candle plasma beings? The closest thing to something esoteric like that I've seen is this is the after hours party. Is these kind of like jellyfish weird things that kind of move around. They're the most blobbiest thing I've ever seen. But nothing like flames. I think I understand what you're saying. I've never seen anything like that. Doesn't mean they don't exist, of course. I've just never seen them. Julian Palmer talks about Soplar and Torping. Okay, Soplar and Torping. Okay, can you guys see me? I'm not sure. Well, anyways, it just jumped off. But if you guys can still see me, Mr. Z, he has made a YouTube video making this up. Okay. All right, well, we can address this tomorrow. Danny, thank you so much, brother. Mr. Z, thank you so much. Again, for a deeper conversation, so I can also really pay attention to the details, if you can just email me to lasersimulationx@gmail.com. Yeah. Danny, I appreciate you, brother. Really great chat the other day. And yeah, I'm now going to go and walk my dogs. Love you guys. Peace and love. Exactly. That's exactly right, Danny.